Good morning. Welcome to the Norwood Systems Investor Webinar session. Thank you for joining us today. It's great to get together on this online format. We don't do it terribly often, and we're delighted to be sharing this morning some of the operational progress that Norwood has made over recent months. I'm Paul Ostergaard, and I'm the CEO and founder of Norwood Systems. For those of you not familiar with Norwood, Norwood is a cloud-based web services company that is focused on delivering advanced web services to both corporates and consumers for voice messaging and security services. I'm now going to walk you through an overview of the company, and after we've finished that presentation, we'll go into a Q&A, which hopefully we'll be able to answer as many of your good questions as we can with the time. Feel also free to submit questions to the webinar portal. We'll try to answer all of these. If time doesn't provide for direct answer, then we'll certainly endeavour to answer those following the closing of the webinar directly via return email. So just to go into the presentation now. I'd like to start with just talking about our strategy, so to set the context of what Norwood's focused on and to understand where we're investing our time and energy, and how we aim over time to get good returns from the dollars that people have been investing in our business. As an overview, and really to encompass both the consumer and the enterprise space, we're really focused on delivering sophisticated, engaging mobile services. So there's a truism in the SaaS world that you're only as good as the end user experience that you deliver. We start with that, work on building really high quality apps, and then we focus on linking them as needed into various IT systems that the end users can benefit from, and that the organization, if an organization is involved in the use of this, that they can also see direct corporate benefit. We focus at the corporate level in integrating very deeply into corporate IT systems, and I'll go through in a few slides just how our vision on that has evolved over the last 2 years. We deal with company-owned phones and also people's own cell phones when they bring them into the office, which is a key issue for privacy sometimes. And we cover all aspects of voice messaging and data security in particular for those phones. We're a cloud-based company, so we don't deploy hardware. We're purely software-driven. We focus really on two key aspects of software, the cloud platforms and then the mobile apps that talk to those cloud platforms. Enterprise mobility is a general concept. Actually, it's an idea that I personally pioneered some 18 years ago in an earlier startup. And in the context of Norwood, it's really around the mobilization of users using corporate IT infrastructure. And what we deliver is a unique form of virtualization. Virtualization is commonly used to describe how people move from on-premises hardware into the cloud. We've taken that one step further and looked at how people can literally virtualize mobile phone services. And, starting with the release of World Message earlier this year, we were able to bring to market a complete mobile virtual service, and that encompasses mobile phone number in any one of 19 countries, including all of North America, most of Europe, Australia, and some of the nearby countries to Australia. Very high quality voicemail and very high quality voice and messaging services, as you can see implied in the app screenshots that you can see there. Recently, we also integrated these virtual mobile services into corporate platforms for bulk deployment to allow some of our larger prospects in our pipeline to rapidly deploy these services over thousands or even tens of thousands of users through what they call their mobile device management platforms. If we just go through and look at how this service has evolved, in particular, just looking firstly at the corporate service that we deliver, Corona. When we did the RTO and went public 2 years ago, about 3 or 4 weeks after we did that RTO, we launched a service called World Phone, which was initially targeting consumers. We then worked quite hard to bring that World Phone product back into the Corona platform so that it also became the front end for Corona for long-distance roaming voice, for making voice calls that were sort of a desk phone extension of the existing corporate infrastructure. And we, in November that year, also launched an Android client to basically allow voice services on both iOS and also Android mobile phone platforms. In March this year, we launched World Message, and we did this based on feedback from customers saying, like the voice product, it would be great if you could actually completely service our needs for mobility with both text messaging and voice calling. And so moving it away a little bit from a desk phone replacement to a mobile phone replacement. And we've discovered that that is really, when we see the opportunity for Norwood, a largely unaddressed market. To our knowledge, no other companies that are going out there and fully substituting the mobile phone, making it virtual. And so we've worked very hard to tie both World Phone and World Message back into Corona, and to have them, even on a phone platform, talk to each other so that they do behave as though they're part of an integrated virtual device. Once we had those, we got a lot of feedback from clients saying, gosh, it would be great if you could link the voice calls and also the messaging back into my CRM. We had one of the largest media companies in the world basically originally give us that idea, and we thought about that for a little while and said that's a pretty cool idea. In parallel almost, we also had feedback from some of our clients in the banking sector saying we're getting absolutely killed by the regulator that caused us to ban all our messaging from any messaging client to any of our customers, because regulatory requirements today in places like the US and UK, and as of January next year, all of the EU require and mandate that you capture and archive all client-facing communications, whether it's on your email in your office, your desk phone in your office, but significantly for Norwood, also on the smartphone. And if you're making smartphone calls or text messaging calls, these are now captured with the under the aegis of these regulations that say that you need to archive and store this client information for quite long periods of time. And so we've moved from just providing pure connectivity up to really providing content, or what we call knowledge internally, where we're capturing this information and loading it into third-party platforms that usually the client is already running for, say, email archival or for Salesforce management, such as a CRM. And that has also led us to start driving some of the client and or the partner relationships that we currently have in the market, and we'll be talking about shortly. Going from that, we are just in the middle of launching what we call World Secure, and this again has been really led from client feedback. Some of you may be aware that we're launching a consumer offering called World Wi-Fi. We're just going into a public beta on that at the moment, having had a limited beta in a number of geographies around the world. We're in the middle of just expanding that beta out. World Secure is a spin-off technology from World Wi-Fi. As we went and spoke with customers, we got a lot of feedback that people are really concerned about the security of Wi-Fi, not just insecure Wi-Fi, but potentially even secure Wi-Fi when someone around the world works out how to hack it. And so we provided a very useful tool in World Secure, which allows an organization to preemptively step up their VPN security policy on demand and have it triggered automatically on users' cell phones within their organization. To our knowledge, it's the first time that there's an app that's triggering a VPN automatically based on certain policy rules, whether it's automatically accessing insecure Wi-Fi or whether the organization is feeling nervous about even secure Wi-Fi and wants to actually secure that all internet traffic to and from their staff members' phones is locked down adequately. So those three apps, plus this capturing of knowledge, provide really the basis for our service delivery. We are currently working on what we call intelligence, and I've got a slide a little bit later which talks about a very specific example we're working through with a Salesforce.com partner at the moment, which is a large university, and it's really dealing with teasing out an understanding of this content that we're capturing for our partners. So moving from connectivity to content to interpreting the content. And we're pretty excited about machine learning. I think it's, when I listened to Larry Ellison a few weeks ago describe Oracle's position on machine learning, they described it as the most important thing since the internet. And we internally agree. There is the opportunity here to build incredibly charismatic applications that really focus on that. The three key areas we're just focusing on at the moment are semantic analysis, content quarantine. This is, for example, being able to identify when a trader is taking a screenshot of a photo of a screen in the trading environment and sending that to a friend in an effort to defeat any text scanning software that the organization has, being able to identify that that's a screenshot and then sending it to the IT organization, so in a quarantine area, so someone can review it and see whether it's benign or whether it's going to lead to a further discussion with the trader. We're also working with a company who's specialized in workflow triggers. This could be, for example, in the emergency services sector, where they may send a text message to someone, and if certain conditions have been met or the content coming back is of a certain has certain trigger words in it, then additional workflow automatically gets triggered without a supervisor necessarily having to make a call on triggering that workflow. And so that's all about automation. It's all about providing additional insight into what your organization is doing. We think there's just a bundle of different I think longer term applications that will arise from this. We're at the very earliest phase of this. These three limited areas that I've just described are the first step for Norwood to do something useful in that area. If you zoom out and look at the overall stack that we've described here, going from connectivity to knowledge to intelligence, I don't believe there's another company in the mobile voice and messaging space that actually has as complete a vision of how we can actually use the connectivity between these devices and corporate IT platforms in a way that actually delivers meaningful benefits to companies. When we go and talk to our partners, they tend to agree, so we are getting, just to give you an update on this, a huge amount of interest from our three key partners that were originally technology partnerships and are rapidly evolving into a proactive reseller or sales partnership. Just to talk a little bit about the app portfolio, in addition to that overall corporate strategy. Again, we launched World Phone in July 2015, followed up with an Android version in November 2015. World Message was released earlier this year, and that allowed us to complete the vision that we have for virtualized mobile services. And we're quickening the pace a little bit and releasing two new apps this month, World Wi-Fi and World Secure, which deal with the problem of connectivity. Both of them are really, in my mind, security products. World Wi-Fi for sure allows you to find Wi-Fi wherever you go, which will be a great boon to consumers. But ultimately, the value we're delivering through that app is one of being able to promise a secure connection to the end user using the app, and they may be on Wi-Fi that they've never seen before in their life as they travel through the world. We think there's great merit and value in delivering a solution that very easily locks down that connection for the traveler or the end user. Similarly, World Secure, as I've described earlier, is a pretty interesting product. I've got two slides just to sort of describe a little bit of both and try and give you a bit more update on where we are with those as follows. So just to recap World Wi-Fi, one of the questions that came in earlier was how is this different from, say, Facebook's Wi-Fi discovery tool? It's different in several aspects. One is it provides this very engaging augmented reality user interface to discover Wi-Fi. Second thing, which Facebook doesn't do, and I don't think any Wi-Fi discovery tools that are out there on the market currently do, We have a kind of AI that's from one of our partners inside the tool that allows you to connect automatically to bypasses most login screens automatically. And the net of that is, when you see that connect button down there, you can literally connect on that. You get a second query from the iPhone operating system saying, are you sure you want to do that? And literally you have this two-click process. It's extremely slick. We're delighted with how it's working. We're really excited to get it into customers' hands as soon as we can. And it really provides a sort of enormously simplified experience of connecting into these rather complicated Wi-Fi login screens that you see. On top of that, we then deliver security, and this is an area where we've been working for pretty much a year now to build a fairly robust global and fully secure, using the latest standards, VPN infrastructure that allows our apps to effortlessly access servers in North America, Europe, Asia, PAC region to get really high bandwidth, good performance on their VPN connection. So they can connect with 2 clicks and automatically have a VPN established in the background, and you can see that in the status bar of the screen of the phone. It gives you a lot of confidence that that particular connection is not going to cause you any issues. World Secure, where basically it's almost a stripped down version of World Wi-Fi, just to focus on the VPN solution here, but has the added benefit of drawing from our learnings in mobile device management to also allow the corporation to override any Wi-Fi security policy that the end user has set. So it provides control for the end user up to the point where the organization said, we see that there's a material threat out there, and we all need to be behaving much more safely when we're accessing Wi-Fi, and the company can immediately force an upgrade to the security policy. It basically happens instantly, and the users don't have to do anything manually at that stage. We're seeing a huge amount of interest in this. We have 2 banks, one here in Australia and one in the US, showing a great deal of interest in this particular solution. It was born out of some dialogue with those banks. The creation of this particular app was born out of that. And we also see from our partner networks that we see that this is something that potentially they could take out and sell as well. So just to recap again on the 2 core apps, this is Norwood's bread and butter, which is World Phone and World Message integrated into Corona. I just wanted to put a slide up here quickly to help people understand what virtualized mobile services look like. Essentially, you have a completely second virtual mobile instance on the phone, separate number, separate mobile number. You can see here US numbers, but we have services in 19 countries. Completely separate separation of all the call history and favorites, so that you can keep your personal life and your business life completely separate. The green apps that you see on the left-hand side are my private life, and I don't want the company to archive or store any information in relation to those applications. The blue and white applications, which are the world apps on the right-hand side of that dock at the bottom of the screen, are my corporate apps, and for the company to record and store that information is fair game. It's certainly preserving my personal privacy while also allowing the company to comply with, for example, in the banking environment, regulatory requirements to store and archive all communications there, or in a sales environment or field service environment to help capture data to improve productivity and understand trends and potential service issues or sales issues. You can see our apps. We put a really huge amount of effort into the quality of these apps, and I think that's self-evident from the screenshots, and we get great customer feedback from that as well. We clearly have also, I've shown just the iPhone apps, but obviously we have Android analogs of these apps also in the marketplace now. We just recently launched the Android version of World Message, which allows us to go out to any client now and provide a full virtual mobile service stack to either an Android user or an iPhone user within the organization. Wanted to, having described that technology portfolio, which hopefully you'll agree is pretty comprehensive. Talk a little bit about our go-to-market approach and what we've been achieving lately in terms of going and talking to both customers and also partners. I want to focus first on the partner side, but before then, also just highlight that we are talking to end customers directly. We've mentioned in the last quarterly that we're making some progress in terms of proofs of concept with some of those clients for these solutions. In the main, I just have to say that we're talking to fairly large businesses, and the sales cycles on dealing with these businesses is not inconsiderable. It's something that we're also getting to grips with to better characterize how long it takes. When we think it's going to be a couple of weeks, it turns out to be months to get to the next hurdle. But we are making unequivocal progress with these proofs of concepts, and I don't think anything has gone backwards that we're aware of with any of our major clients, in particular the ones that we referenced in the quarterly. We are super happy with how some of those particular dialogues and those customer conversations are going. They can clearly see a need that is unaddressed today, and that our solution is looking like it's providing a credible answer for. Our partners as well clearly see that. And one thing I'd ask you all is to consider the logic of these partners showing a lot of interest in working with us. There has to be a compelling underlying reason for that. They are in the marketplace every day talking to these large clients at a level of intensity that we could only dream of. And they certainly see enormous amounts of merit in our solutions, and therefore have shown a level of eagerness and aggression even in getting into a partnership with Norwood to work on a joint go-to-market for that. From a strategy point of view, again, we're really focusing on the areas that carriers can't easily service. So this is like BYOD would be a key one, where all the end users are on different mobile contracts. Deep integration into these third-party platforms, which again bolsters the interest from the parties to work with us. And we're working on a number, as I've mentioned in the quarterly, key reference accounts to sort of really build trust through that channel relationship. We would see the partner channel, I think, over time really dominating our sales revenue profile. We are working with some direct accounts to begin with, but the learning, I think, from our side is that we can probably make progress substantially quicker by being embraced by an Oracle or a Salesforce or a Veritas, and for them to take the solution into their existing accounts all around the world. Just to give you an idea, this is currently a list of the major, what we call Corona integration partnerships. What I mean by that is that we have a connector within Corona that allows you to connect to each of these platforms. In some cases, this has taken months and months of work. We've been collaborating very closely with Oracle in particular, and I'd like to talk a little bit about just that partnership to begin with, and then round it out with a discussion on what we're doing with one of the other partners as well. So when we provided the invitation to the webinar, we said we'd provide a lot more detail on the Oracle relationship. We've been working with them for around 6 months, and Sales Cloud is one of a number of cloud platforms that Oracle has. They're well known for being an on-premises provider of databases. Over the last 3 to 4 years, I think they've really gotten religion about cloud, and they're working to transition their customer base. So they have, in case any of you are unaware, 430,000 customers around the world. World's second largest software company, and they are in the middle of transitioning that on-premises install base to a fully cloud solution because A, it's more efficient, B, it allows Oracle and the customers to do things they simply couldn't do just with an on-premises solution previously. One of the major issues is just software updates. Believe it or not, they find that real issue, and all the instances that you heard of in the press recently of any security hacks, by and large, have been after a patch has been made available, but the client actually hasn't installed it. So cloud solutions can obviously provide far more up-to-date service and really prevent further recurrences of those sort of security breaches occurring. Just to give you an idea of the solution architecture, and this is sort of just a very high-level view. I've got a slightly more detailed view on the next slide. But the general idea is that we basically, when users are making calls on our apps, we can record the audio, we can capture the text content, we can capture all the metadata, the time and date of the call, who they're calling. Even things like read receipts and delivery receipts can be captured through this API. And we send it by using a data matching exercise on the phone number to an instance of Sales Cloud currently running. Sales Cloud is the equivalent of Salesforce.com's CRM platform, so it's its own customer relationship management system. They have a sister platform called Service Cloud, which is dealing with servicing field technicians. Oracle have pitched our solution already to a large water utility in the UK in the anticipation of us also supporting Service Cloud over time, where the water utility have, as you can imagine, a large workforce of field technicians all speaking on their mobile phone, and trying to understand exactly what's going on there would be a huge boon for them. So really, they can see that there's a real hard application for this, and sales teams inside Oracle, both in the US and also UK, are, to our understanding, taking this out and pitching quite aggressively already. This is a fairly jargon-heavy slide, but so I apologise for that. The AAS things that you see, IaaS and PaaS and SaaS and DaaS, are parts of the Oracle cloud hierarchy. And so they begin with, respectively, at the bottom, infrastructure, platform, software, and data. And I put this slide together in partnership with some of the Oracle guys to help the rest of the Oracle organization understand how we are working with them. And it also sort of emphasizes the point that Oracle in particular see us as a data as a service provider. What we're providing through our apps is information and hopefully over time intelligence in terms of interpreting the content, but certainly delivering the content directly into the Sales Cloud instance and shortly into Service Cloud, and in the regulatory environment also something called Oracle Data Vault, which has a number of very large banks using it all around the world. So those three platforms are sort of where Norwood is currently focusing. We've achieved one integration already. We have been working with Oracle in 4 geographies around the world to make this happen. Their platform and product people in Redwood Shores, in the headquarters of the US, their engineering team in Singapore, and client and support teams in the US and the UK, who originally, through some client interactions, discovered that Norwood existed and started engaging with us and encouraged us to start working on a deeper level of integration. We're super excited by this relationship. I can see it really bearing sort of medium to long-term fruit, just bearing in mind that most of Oracle's clients are really, really large companies, and the sales cycle for any of those is likely not to be a short and quick sales cycle. But certainly in terms of validation, in terms of Oracle's willingness to be quoted in our press releases, in terms of them taking the solution out to market, in terms of third parties looking at us as a sort of fairly well-embedded Oracle partner, we think that's just a huge thing for the business and provides enormous validation of all the hard work that we've been doing over the last couple of years. I wanted to also just talk about what we're doing with Salesforce very quickly. We announced quite some time ago that we've integrated into Salesforce's CRM. We're starting to work with Salesforce directly now, and we mentioned this in the quarterly. It's a deal that we are currently working on, which highlights a little bit of that earlier stack that I described, where we go from connectivity to knowledge to intelligence, or another way of looking at that is connectivity, content, and data interpretation. And what I wanted to show you is a somewhat complicated slide, but it's particularly the solution that was referenced in the quarterly, which describes a university. another integration partner, and Salesforce and Norwood all working together to start to understand how the customers of that university, being the student body, and they have something like 50,000 students, they're a fairly large university, how those students are interacting with the lecturers and the support teams within the university. Now, normally to get a sense of how well you're doing from a customer support point of view, you'd run surveys, and you'd run sort of manual surveys to poll them and get typically what people would refer to as net promoter scores. This solution will deliver a real-time barometer of the sentiment of the student body directly as they're talking and as they're communicating with support people within the university. So it's actually, in some ways, revolutionary. This will take what was before a fairly laborious process and turn it into a real-time health indicator for the organisation. They're pretty excited by this. This actually is getting mentioned at Dreamforce, not with Norwood being mentioned, sadly, but the concept overall is being brought up at Dreamforce by the client, and we're pretty excited to be working with them. I think this is something, again, that's sort of medium term. It's out there. We're trying to work out who does some of the more funky AI pieces in here. We're certainly going to be doing a little bit of that ourselves, but they would like to layer on top Salesforce's own AI engine called Einstein to also carry some of the load on that. The net result is what you see as the output. Do you have happy or sad customers? And if you see a cluster of them suddenly emerging somewhere, what actually caused that, so the university can take proactive steps to actually fix whatever the issue is, or reward a professor that's getting rave reviews from their students. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea of where we've got to in terms of the platforms, both on the app side and also on the general technology strategy and our go-to-market strategy. We do have a number of clients, as I mentioned, in the proof of concept stage. I'm guessing that there will be questions about those, so I've sort of left sort of direct reference of those out of the presentation, and look forward to answering some of the questions that are coming through now. So we'll move from presentation into the Q&A now, and I have sitting next to me Shane Murphy, who's helping us with this process, and he will start calling out some of the questions.
All right, thanks very much, Paul, and I think everyone can hear me okay. So we'll start with the first question from online, which comes from Andrew, and it is, what is your strategy for competing against Skype Business?
Okay, that's a great question. So Skype Business is really a solution that deals with a desktop replacement and what we broadly refer to as unified communications providers. Norwood's focus is entirely different, actually. What we're focusing on is the virtualization of mobile phone services. And so we're dealing with direct SMS integrations, for example, which Skype Business doesn't do. We're dealing with real mobile phone numbers, which again Skype Business doesn't do. If you think about it, and you're providing an over-the-top service like Skype Business or Norwood's virtual mobile service, if you don't provide a mobile phone number, then the people that you're calling won't know that they can text you on that number. And so we think it's really pretty important to have not only really high quality messaging apps and voice apps and really high quality voicemail that's actually integrated into your same contacts and not trying to force you to use another contacts database, and actually has a mobile phone number. And if you think about it, what we actually are doing is making it impossible for the outside party to tell that you're not using a cell phone. They're calling you on a mobile number, they can leave a voicemail, they can text you. It looks and behaves like a cellular phone service, which is really quite a different positioning from Skype for Business.
All right, thanks, Paul. So the next question, again from Andrew, is for WorldPhone. You've got the option to switch between personal and work. From a, I think that's enterprise perspective, how can this be locked down so that all comms are done by the work at the same time?
Yeah, so we do actually provide that option. So there's an option inside Corona to, slightly technical question, but inside Corona there is the option for the IT administrator to basically force it to business-only mode. So it doesn't behave like a personal device. And particularly when you're deploying this through a mobile device management solution, you really don't want too many degrees of freedom to exist. So the idea is the mobile device management platform pushes the apps out onto the staff member's enrolled device, configures it automatically, and there's nothing the end user can do to kind of mess with that configuration.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Next question from Andrew. A few days ago, an ad appeared on TV from Symantec for NordVPN. How will Norwood compete against this?
So the VPN market's quite interesting. We see a lot of companies, and a sister company of Symantec, Veritas, I just have to add parenthetically, is a really good partner of ours. The VPN market is broadly composed, when we studied it, of people providing VPNs into corporate environments. And typically the end user has to enable the app that sits on their phone to manually enable that VPN. The market that we're addressing, we've sort of really seen a pretty solid hole in the market for being able to assert a VPN automatically when certain policy triggers are evident. For example, I have a staff member that's gone to a Starbucks, or even the Qantas lounge, when you look at it, is actually an insecure VPN, or insecure Wi-Fi rather. And when you end up on that insecure Wi-Fi, you actually have no guarantee you're really on that Wi-Fi. There could be a clever spoofing service between you and the real Qantas service. And so when you're in that kind of mode, everything that you transmit on your phone is visible through that insecure Wi-Fi if they're able to tap into the data. And so it becomes really important if you're a bank and you're starting to nail down where are all the security holes in my staff members' use of IT. This is one of the last remaining holes that they haven't been able to satisfactorily nail down. And it's where staff members are going out and using insecure Wi-Fi because they've been told that they can't use data roaming when they're traveling. Then they get told they can't use insecure Wi-Fi, and then their productivity suffers because, well, they go back to using data roaming and spending a lot of money with the client, with the company. So, you know, what we've done, and this is a little bit of a function of our relationship with Apple, and we did mention this during the quarterly, we've received a special entitlement from Apple that allows us to be woken up every time the app changes its Wi-Fi state. And it's because of that special entitlement that we can assert a policy that allows us to say, oh, this user was just starting to access an insecure Wi-Fi connection. The policy at the moment, based on the company and the personal preferences, is that I should set up a VPN at this point. And so it does that, and it does it in an automatic way. It's actually pretty wild. You basically go onto the Starbucks coffee Wi-Fi network, and all of a sudden your VPN is there without you having to consciously remember it. So it provides a kind of background monitoring mode. We think it's pretty unique. We're certainly not aware of any other apps that are doing that, because that entitlement from Apple is actually not given out very often. We earned it through the work that we've been doing with World Wi-Fi and talking to Apple for 4 years now on ideas that we've had with Wi-Fi to make Wi-Fi user experience better. They've taken on board some of those suggestions over time, and yeah, so we're pretty excited by it, and it delivers something. When we go and present it to CIOs, they immediately get it. They go, "That's super interesting. When can we play with it?" And so we've been working as hard as we possibly can to bring it to market, because we've had, I would characterize as the strongest interest in any of our solutions ever from that particular solution. People are really concerned today about the potential for security or InfoSec breaches, as they call them. Anyway.
Thanks, Paul. So the next question is from investor Brett, and it is data still on Norwood's radar? As I believe this would be an excellent offer in conjunction with global Wi-Fi.
So I guess just to interpret that, it's mobile data. Yeah, and so we aren't probably going to go down that path. I think to do mobile data, you need to go into the SIM market, and to be able to deliver a SIM would require setting up MVNOs or reselling someone else's MVNO. It's really not what Norwood's focus is. Norwood's focus is more about using existing data services that are either on Wi-Fi or 3G, 4G domestically, and delivering valuable services on top of those, whether it's InfoSec, cybersecurity, or whether it's voice and messaging tied back to the corporate environment.
All right, thanks, Paul. So the next question is from investor Brett. Is asked, what revenue is expected over the next 2 months? I think you can probably cover that by covering what's in the quarterly. And how is this is this sufficient to fund Norwood going forward, or are you expecting a capital raising?
That's a great question. So just recapping what we forecast in the quarterly, I think we forecast something like roughly $280,000 for the October to December quarter, which is an acceleration of where we were in the previous quarter, based on some of the near-term prospects that we're seeing. We are focusing obviously on running the company judiciously, but the board will take a view on it at this stage. We are not considering any sort of third-party sort of strategic investor at this stage. I think that was one of the other questions that came in.
Yep.
But the board sort of continues to monitor the needs for the company. What I will say just on near-term cash is that we have put a solution in place to also factor our short-term our R&D for the following year to allow for drawing down on that earlier than we'd otherwise need to.
And Brett also asked if you're considering a share consolidation.
That subject has come up from time to time. It's not something we're immediately considering, but it may be something that we look at down the track.
Okay. So the next question is from investor Nicholas. I think you may have already sort of just covered that now. Is, are you looking at securing an external backer for your technology as an alternative to capital raising?
Yeah, look, there's a lot of different ways to raise capital. It is an option. We haven't had any active dialogue with an external strategic investor at this stage. Not to say that won't happen, but it's not something that we've looked at over the last few weeks or months.
Thanks. And the next question is from investor Andrew through online. He says, just some feedback to share. Used World Wi-Fi this morning. Works brilliantly with one click using secure VPN. Would you have the release date for Android?
Look, I'm firstly delighted to hear that you're enjoying the app. We've put a lot of blood, sweat and tears into it, and it's a complicated product because it relies on third-party databases. We have to verify the integrity of those databases, and it's been just a crazy amount of work that's gone into that. Having said that, now that we're in a position that the third-party data layer is at a level where we're happy with it, we're working flat out on the Android solution. We expect that to be available in beta probably within the next 4 to 6 weeks at most. We have a pretty mature version of it already, but there's some things that we want to migrate back from the iOS solution. For example, some of the augmented reality features and the VPN features. And the team is working very hard to get that out as well. Obviously, as a consumer product, we're fully aware that Android is a major platform out there, and we're very keen to also get it onto that platform.
Thank you. So the next question is from Steve, and it actually says he's left, but we'll answer this anyway. So I'll break it up into 2 parts. First off, it says it's apparent the products have been around for some time, since late 2015. I don't know if you want to sort of address that misconception.
Yeah, so I mean, I think World Phone certainly has been around since 2015, but I want to really emphasize one thing which maybe I didn't cover during the earlier presentation. That is the migration of the company's strategy from being a roaming arbitrage play, where we're providing cheaper long distance and roaming calls, to providing, and we set this strategy in place some 18 months, 2 years ago nearly, when we started seeing that roaming wasn't going to be around forever as a real value proposition. And we set to work on building platforms then, even 2 years ago, that had more durable and lasting value propositions in the market. And so we focused on 3 key areas. One is the bring your own device market, where we can completely, you think for a moment of how many companies around the world are issuing cell phones to start with. and how much capital is needlessly being spent on replacing all of that hardware every year, when you could instead use Norwood's solution and put 2 virtual apps on the staff member's personal mobile phone, address all of their privacy concerns without giving up any of the control of the number that normally is associated with a BYOD strategy. So BYOD is a major market for us. Gartner estimates, the value of the BYOD market annually to be on the order of $75 billion. So it's actually a big deal, and for us to play in that and provide more control to the enterprise by having control of the numbers still, as well as segmenting, private versus business use, is just a huge deal. We're extremely confident that we're on the right track with that. Layered on top of those 2 solutions, we've then got CRM and the compliance integration pieces, where we're archiving in one form or another all of the content into any of a number of different CRMs or archival solutions. And these are durable value propositions. These are needs that the companies have that aren't going away in a big hurry. It's not because of any price change or anything. These are systematic, business-driven requirements that large corporates, we're seeing real tangible evidence of that, and you should see from the partners that are stepping up to play with us that it's not just Paul Ostergaard talking. Very large businesses are agreeing with our point of view on that and starting to partner with us.
Right, thanks, Paul. So I'll ask a question that's come in sort of a number of different forms from a number of investors. I'll ask it in the sort of way that investor Nicholas has phrased it, which is basically, when are revenue deals going to be forthcoming, such as the Corona compliance proof of concept client, and what sort of revenues can we expect?
So part of that you can read into the acceleration revenues that we've shown for this coming quarter. There's certainly some revenues coming in from that. We have a number of clients in our pipeline, and as I mentioned earlier, the sales cycles on these things are long. We are personally a little bit frustrated at how long they're taking. Just to give you an idea, we would have liked to have been into a revenue generating position by now, but we're working, all I can say is we're working as hard as we can to bring that revenue to fruition, and there is zero data that we received that gives us any feeling that we're not on the right track for that. And so we're feeling as confident as we ever have. We're extremely happy with where we are internally in terms of just having completed a major push on our technology portfolio. The team has been working incredibly hard and is extremely motivated and sees results from engaging with large partners. Really gives them also a very good feeling because they can see there's a lot of third-party interest in what we're doing. And we're just working on those proof of concept clients and the pipeline, and also helping our partners productize this and include it in their sales portfolio as quickly as possible. And some of these large partners, the Oracles and others that I've mentioned, are indeed looking at putting it into their own sales book and selling it actively in the market. For them to be saying that to us already, I think, is a good indication that we, medium term, are going to be looking at some great revenue opportunities.
So, follow-up question from Steve. So do you feel that there's a need for the products that Norwood's offering?
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at just take the compliance market at the moment. The regulation of financial services firms is increasing worldwide. I mentioned in the quarterly, I believe it was in the quarterly, in the more detailed discussion, new regulation coming out in Europe called Markets in Financial Instruments Directive, MiFID, or MiFID 2, I think it's called now. And if you go into that Article 16 on the link that I provided, you'll see that everything has to be recorded. They have to record all voice calls, even on a cell phone. And it's not obvious how to do that when you're on a BYOD solution where a staff member has their own personal mobile plan. How does the company actually get the business calls recorded? And by the way, how does the company avoid recording all the personal calls as well in that environment? So if you look at the US market, Australia is a little bit less well developed than the US from a BYOD perspective. And just to avoid jargon again, BYOD stands for bring your own device, where the staff member uses their own phone. In the US, that's about 60% of all mobile services now for large corporates, whereas it's only around 15% in Australia. So that 60% market in the US currently has a huge issue, whether it's a bank trying to actually achieve compliance with these regulations. So similarly with the CRM integration, if you look at how can I make my sales force or my field service workforce more effective and more productive? Currently, they go out into the field, they're using their smartphones, they're freewheeling. They're making calls, they're texting clients. A salesperson, a woman walks down the street and a major client sends her a text message about a really important part of the deal that they're working on. My question to Salesforce and Oracle and all of our clients is, how did that text message get back into your CRM? The honest answer is it probably never did, because the level of effort required to do that is orders of magnitude above just the action of receiving it. And so there's a huge amount of interaction data that is currently just disappearing into a black hole. Now, in and of itself, that's nice. People say, well, why would you need the data? Well, it turns out, going back again to the what's basically the hottest investment area in the world at the moment, being machine learning and artificial intelligence, that very charismatic applications are being brought to bear to analyze that data. And those applications basically eat data. They need to be fed with data that's meaningful, that relates to the way that your staff members and employees are interacting with outside stakeholders and clients. And every time they do that on a smartphone today, that goes into a giant black hole. And Norwood has a compelling and very unique solution at the moment in the market to actually very comprehensively address that. And that's why we're getting buy-in quite rapidly from some of the bigger players in town to help integrate our solution into their CRM platforms.
Okay, so I'll pick up with the next question from investor Nicholas, which is, to date, the revenue deals have been small, say 200,000, 300,000. Are there deals out there that will be 1 million or 10 million in size?
So I can speak to that. We did reference one deal in the quarterly, which we estimated to be around a $2 million annual recurring revenue size deal. Just to paint it into numbers, this particular client's a bank. They have 26,000 mobile phones that they're currently managing and replacing on a sort of 2 to 3 year cycle. And there's no guarantee, obviously, we'll get the deal, but the deal that we're currently discussing with these guys is one of us substituting an appreciable percentage, a double-digit percentage of all these mobile phones with a virtual mobile service. And the bank has a vowed objective of going BYOD. It comes from the CEO downwards. And in fact, we've been dealing with the CEO, the CIO, the head of voice networks, the number 2 guy at voice networks, who owns the mobile services contract currently. They're normally the guys that give us a hard time, but in this particular instance, he's been told to give us every bit of assistance. So we're feeling slightly more confident than normal about the deal. And we're working through the status we're at the moment. They've gone through bench testing of this deal, of our apps and services. They like that, both on Android and iOS. And we're in the middle of studying how the mutual economics works for the bank, the employee, and Norwood. And our motivation, obviously, is to get the deal. Not that we're going to bend over totally backwards, but we're reasonably confident that hopefully something will come out of this. And if you look at just service revenue to Norwood of roughly $22.50 per month per user for that particular deal for ARPU, most of that is a SaaS fee, so it's not a telco fee, so it's very high margin. And if you think of even a few thousand users being transitioned over, when you multiply it out by 12 months, you'll see that builds up easily to a multi-million-dollar revenue stream for Norwood. So we're pretty excited by that prospect. We're seeing a number of very similar prospects, and again, we can't make any guarantees about whether they close, but this is particularly a deal where we've had the executive leadership of the whole bank showing interest in being involved. So we feel in our hearts that we've done as much as we can, and we're working on it.
Okay, thanks, Paul. So a question from investor Nicholas. You mentioned RAC ramp up in the quarterly. Can you give us some more detail on how Opinion, Comsys or other clients are going?
Yeah, sure. Agreement with RAC and Comsys remain on track to sort of gain momentum over the coming quarters. They have been slower than we'd like. We're working quite proactively with their engagement teams, both at the RAC level and with Comsys on their engineering and customer support side to get the revenues that we're forecasting. Oceaneering is progressing well. They're a very strong partner of ours. They also, interestingly, just became an Oracle Sales Cloud customer, and we're working with their CIO group out of Houston now to talk about how we can integrate that in as a three-way deal between Oracle, Oceaneering, and ourselves. Very early stages at this stage. No contracts to talk about yet, but we're very happy with the level of engagement that we have from the Asia-Pac CIO of Oceaneering. We now have, to give you an idea, 4 of Oceaneering sites deployed through Australia, and they're considering how to expand it out to their Asia-Pac installations as well.
Right, thanks, Paul. Next question is from investor Ryan. Is a significant contract expected this month?
We can't make any promises. We're working hard on several large proofs of concept, and we're hopeful, I think would be the right term to use, that one or more of those will transition to a contract. I can't provide any guarantees as to timing. A lot of that is in the hands of the client and their own fairly complex decision-making processes, multiple stakeholders. Any of these large companies, when we deal with them, it's not a single handshake or a single person that signs off on the deal. There's what we call a complex decision-making unit inside the organisation that we have to deal with and tick all the boxes with. And it's getting the tick from the security guys, from the IT guys, from the finance guys, from the business analysts, and a bunch of people. And we're getting better and better at that, I have to say. But it still takes time.
Right, thanks, Paul. So next question from investor Nicholas. I see you are forecasting acceleration of revenues in the next quarter. Are you confident of this forecasting?
I think we are. We're pretty diligent in it. I mean, it's not a perfect exercise. We're as confident as we can be. And we have a number of what I would characterize as pretty juicy prospects in that pipeline that are well progressed. And so that's the basis on which we actually put it into the forecast.
So next question from investor Andrew. If a big contract is secured, what is Norwood's rollout strategy?
So part of that is preparation work that we've already put in place by supporting, for example, these mobile device management platforms. Key to rolling out anything at scale is automation, and we're now in a position where we can confidently deploy thousands or tens of thousands of users very, very quickly. The organisations that we're dealing with, in turn, have their own IT support staff that typically will provide the arms and legs to help onboard the users within the organisation to use the service. At our end, to scale up to thousands of users, things like mobile phone numbers, we can deploy within 3-day turnaround now for mobile phone numbers in any of the 19 countries in volumes of 1,000 or more. And so there is a fairly light touch on behalf of Norwood's platform. At the customer end, it becomes more involved, a bunch of directory services issues, how they manage the users, and how they import user data into their mobile device management platform to support our apps is another matter. But we're confident that we've done everything we can to greatly streamline any scaled up deployment at this stage.
Thanks, Paul. So next question is, have you had any takeover approaches?
No, not yet.
Excellent. Next question from investor Robert. How did the briefing with Oracle's North American banking sales team go?
That's a great question. It went very well. We were invited in just to provide some colour to this, to pitch to the guys that own the banking relationships for the top 200 financial services firms in the US. They include people like Bank of America, JP Morgan Chase, and I think Wells Fargo and a bunch of other banks. The net result was they looked at 8 different companies pitching on the day. They're going to stack rank those companies. We were the last presenter of the day, and we had a huge number of questions, really a lot of interest. We were given guidance before going in there that we needed to demonstrate to that sales team that we would make a reasonable dent in their ability to achieve their annual target individually. And so we also provided some insight into what we thought the economics could be for how they could on-sell Vault or one of the cloud platforms that I referred to previously, Sales Cloud or Service Cloud, and how much of a revenue uplift they could get by also cross-selling the Norwood platform. And we showed sort of for an average client that's probably a 30 to 40% uplift. And so that, assuming that they've got a percentage of those clients, that would lead to a sort of 10% impact on their annual targets, which was absolutely enough, I can tell you, to get their avowed interest, and that triggered a large number of questions about where exactly we were at in terms of level of integration, how ready we were to support them, who's available in the US to support them directly. Turns out we have a North American sales head based in Manhattan, so that went down very well, and we walked away feeling pretty happy. Again, I just have to preface it by dealing with really, really large organizations, and it was as good a first start into that particular segment as we could have hoped to get, but resulting revenues and sales arising from that will probably take some time still.
So similar question, what has been the feedback from the global reload client, the one currently carrying out a proof of concept for Corona compliance?
Yeah, so we believe we're nearly at the end of that proof of concept. Feedback's been very good, and we believe we're almost certain that that's going to lead to a material rollout.
Okay, thanks. Next question, how is progress with major credit card processor?
Slower than we would like. We're waiting for World Wi-Fi to go back to them and go out. They ended up don't want to say anything that might be misconstrued here, but they ended up not taking action on our World Phone product, and I won't speculate as to the reasons why, but they did signal very strong interest in the Wi-Fi product, and they want an all-of-market solution for that, so they're also waiting for the Android version to come out as well, and again, that's driving motivation for us to finish the Android development as quickly as we can.
Thanks, Paul. Next question, what has been the reception and take-up of World Secure?
Well, we haven't launched it yet, but when we pitched it to banks, they're nearly chewing our arm off. I mean, it really, I can't overstate how much of an issue this is for people in the financial services world. They are genuinely worried that this is one area that they basically haven't locked down yet, that they don't have good control over. Putting a VPN on every single phone all the time is kind of a huge overkill and is going to lead to staff dissatisfaction. It really doesn't work as a solution. But a solution where if you're in Starbucks and I'm using insecure Wi-Fi, I'll live with that as an employee. I can understand the need for the company to assert a VPN in that situation. And so we've demonstrated an early technology demonstrator to this to one bank, and they really, really liked it. So we're looking to basically release that. It's a much simpler product than World Wi-Fi, so we're not going to run an extended public beta or anything like that. We know exactly what's needed to release it, and we're aiming for the release mid-month, as we previously advised, for that onto the Apple App Store. What I will say is we're also going to be producing a sort of consumer version of that app to allow end users also to benefit from it. It won't just be an enterprise-focused service. So consumers will be able to use iTunes to subscribe to a 1-month, 3-month, or 12-month service, automatically renewable, and that's really to fund essentially the VPN infrastructure to terminate all the cloud data flows that we will trigger by having the VPN in place. Yeah, we see that as a pretty interesting short term. It's also just to describe this for the enterprise. it's an incredibly good leg in the door when we go in and talk to large clients. They sort of, okay, voice and messaging, yes, okay. I do have an issue there, but it'll be considered in due course. And when it comes to security, what we're seeing, which is new to us, is a level of urgency, because they're worried that all these records of InfoSec breaches that have happened recently have been because open doors haven't been closed. And CIOs and others are obviously very concerned that they don't want to be accused fairly or unfairly of having neglected a particular security hole. And this is something that they've really struggled with.
Thanks, Paul. So next question, is the cash burn still reducing?
It is. We're constantly working on areas where we can achieve greater efficiencies. There is just one thing that's providing sort of upward pressure on that, and that is our need to support some of these major partnerships. So we're likely to add a headcount or two for supporting Oracle in particular. Probably also that person will be supporting Veritas in terms of it's a pre- and post-sales engineering role. But we've been very careful in terms of stepping up any increase in costs, obviously, and we're working very hard on reducing the current cost base that we have.
We've done significant contract. Let's have a look. Sorry, I'm just looking through the questions. Oh, what level of uptake have you seen from each Corona integration partnership?
Well, the integration partnerships are just rolling out now. The first one that we're seeing going out is with Global Relay. So that's a live implementation. It's currently being tested, and we're really very excited by that. Oracle, because they're dealing with larger clients, we'd say the uptake is going to take longer, but what's very encouraging is that they're promoting it and pushing it into large companies already. An example would be a large water company in the UK. Recently had our service bid into a proposal, and that was mainly for what they call Oracle Service Cloud. But again, they have a large number of field service technicians as a water company running out in the field, and we haven't had feedback yet on how that particular process has or that bid has been progressing. What we do know is that the initial feedback from those clients was very positive, and we've had about a half dozen bids or discussions from Oracle field organisation into clients. Every single one of them has come back positive, which is super encouraging. So our lead champion, who's a 23-year veteran at Oracle, John A. Bell, provided some feedback to our chairman recently that they're really pretty enthused about how that's all progressing. They can see a real emerging customer need for this.
Thanks, Paul. We're actually sort of about 10 minutes over the scheduled finish time now. So
that's all right. I'm happy to keep going with some questions if there's some.
Keep going.
If everybody's happy.
Yeah. So I think we've actually maybe addressed this one, which is a question on couple rating.
So we're reviewing our requirements constantly. The board is meeting fairly regularly to look at its future funding requirements, and it's obviously, its fiduciary duty is to ensure that the company is well funded. So all I can say is we are looking at the future capital requirements of the business closely, and the company will make responsible decisions as to that. We have had, I will say, unsolicited interest in potentially investing in the company based on some of the progress that we're showing with some of these key partners. So we remain pretty confident about the company's future ability to service its ongoing technology development and also go to market in the markets that we're active in.
Well, next question from investor Andrew, is Norwood looking at any partnership with phone providers in having Norwood software pre-installed?
Not at this stage. It has come up from time to time, and at the consumer level, we can see that some of that might make sense, especially World Wi-Fi. But we are really, the bulk of where we see our economic fortunes are in the integration into these enterprise platforms. We're seeing traction there. We're seeing interest from partners there, and we're seeing direct sort of validation pretty much every day that we're coming into the office on, and so we're very enthusiastic about that.
And just remind everyone, if you want to stick a question in online, just hit the little sort of question mark symbol over in the software. It's over the right-hand side. So Paul, a question that came in before the webinar: how far off are the new apps for WorldPhone 3.0 and WorldMessage 2.0?
Yeah, so for those of you who didn't read the reference in the quarterly, those are the two apps that will start to incorporate machine learning components in them. We don't see machine learning as a separate app or anything like that. We see them embedded into the current services. And our view is that the apps themselves, from a scalability point of view, really need to do some of the heavy lifting there. The good news is that both Google and Apple are really working on frameworks to support really high quality machine learning code to be deployed on apps and not eat the battery life or provide a poor user experience. So that's a longhand way of answering the question that we're working on currently. We would expect some of these things to be released this quarter, and certainly WorldMessage and or WorldPhone 3.0 will be released this quarter with some of the machine learning components in there already. We have, I mean, just to give people an idea, we have solutions already running and operational. I think we shared some of the graphics of some of the machine learning visual recognition software that we're integrating into WorldMessage on one of the previous announcements. And again, it's about providing additional color and insight, what machine learning people call ontologies, provide somehow insights into the content that we're capturing for our clients. And they obviously have their own machine learning tools as well, but where there's processor-intensive stuff, it's far better to do that at the actual edge of the network, meaning the phone client, rather than bringing it all back into a concentrated server platform that ends up being an expensive proposition for clients.
Thanks. Next question for Roshan. I'll skip part A because I've already answered that, but part B, what is the long-term vision for Norwood? I.e. retain the patents and royalties, become subject to a buyout, or continue more in an R&D role? So do you want to sort of just expand a little bit on the longer-term vision?
Yeah, so we're pioneering this idea of virtualized mobile services. We see that having really long legs and traction out into the foreseeable future. Can never say no to potentially an offer coming in to buy the company, but we'd obviously look at that on the merits of the proposal. But the ambition at the moment is to put a meaningful dent into the mobile services market, and in particular, making it more efficient, making it more well-connected, and making it more intelligent than anything that the mobile services operators are currently doing with their own SIM offerings for corporates. And where we're heading is a substantially more well-connected and intelligent mobile service that corporate customers can use to help improve the productivity of their staff and to monitor whether their staff are doing well or not doing well. And we just see that as a good long-term ambition for us. There's some hugely exciting things coming out in machine learning. We see that kind of, I think, probably being a major area of R&D focus for us over the coming year. Having achieved everything that we set out to do with just a raw connectivity piece in terms of providing a really high-quality app experience for both voice and messaging. Really, the future for Norwood is how well we can integrate into these third-party platforms and, in turn, deliver value to corporates. And we see that as an ongoing mission that we're, in terms of our strategic positioning at the moment, we're extremely satisfied with that. We're seeing very little competition in that area. We think we're miles ahead of anybody else in that particular space, and we have a much fuller vision for how this actually delivers value to the corporate market. And so we're just executing on that and keeping our heads down and making sure that some of these early, as I described, juicy prospects that are in our pipeline close and actually generate the revenues that we've been looking for.
Thanks, Paul. We haven't had any more questions come in online at this stage, so I don't know if you want to...
No, so can I thank you all for attending, and if there are further questions, you can send them also to ceo@norwoodsystems.com. Happy to answer them directly. Some of our shareholders who have communicated with me directly know that I endeavour to try and answer most queries that come in, and just to re-emphasise, we're extremely excited about the future prospects for Norwood. We are getting tremendous validation from these large partnerships and also the engagement with very large clients, and we couldn't be more excited about the future prospects for the business.
Well, thanks very much, Paul, and thanks everyone for joining today.
Thank you.